welcome, dear friends, as we gather on this glorious afternoon to celebrate the life of Roby Harrington. And I am thrilled that so many of you were able to join us and to make his spirit come alive in our midst. Oh, I can't wait for the stories and all of the angles of a multifaceted, beautiful life that he lived and shared with all of us. So I want to welcome you. I want to thank a host of people before we begin. Really, what you see before you in this exquisite bulletin, with such a distinguished picture, is the creative gift of the family who has been brainstorming for over a month now, pulling together all of the different ways that really need to be lifted up to make our celebration worthy of Roby's life among us. I want to thank all the participants who sing, who speak, who share from a very deep and sensitive place their stories and their love for their dear Roby. And I want to thank all of us, too, because so much of what we're about won't be spoken, but it'll be shared spiritually. And then again at the reception afterward, it will magnify everything that happens here. And I want to begin from one angle that I've appreciated. I was culling my library the other day and found no less than 20 books that Roby sent me home with from a variety of pastoral visits to him, to wit, when they were ailing, when they were well. He was a voracious reader and loved to share the gleanings and the wisdom of what he read. And to that end, this afternoon, there will be books for all of us from his personal library that we hope you will take home with you and cherish with you and label Roby's. But his whole life is a glorious story, isn't it? And you have read portions of it or lived it with him. And so that's the story that we are celebrating this afternoon. And I'm so glad we're doing it together. As I have welcomed you and already talked about an individual, I hope we know that we are also in the presence of God's love, and we are a congregation of faith and memory. And let's begin our celebration by singing our opening hymn, whose words are found in the bulletin. Let's stand if we're able. Friends, won't you kindly be seated? Some of you may remember that we sang that at Whit's funeral too. Let's be in the spirit and power of prayer. Let us pray. O God of grace, O God of mercy, we gather here this afternoon in the protective shelter of your healing love, praying that what we are about and everything we do will lift up our hearts in the midst of our grief, and that you will help us to replace the loss of the physical with the powerful presence of the spiritual, that we may feel your care in the ways we each need it the most. We gather here as your people, O source of life, conscious of others who've died before Roby, and of the frailty of our own existence here on earth. So help us to live each and every moment of life as fully and faithfully as we possibly can. Thank you, O Lord, for this splendid community of memory and care. We come to comfort one another in our common loss, and especially to surround Roby's children, Chip, Scott, Todd, Sue, Roby's grandchildren, and the entire clan. Let them feel our understanding and total acceptance of all of what they feel this day. And we gather as worshipers, O Lord, to hear your words of hope that may drive away any despair and move us ultimately to offer you praise and thanksgiving for the life of Roby Harrington, and to commend him into your heavenly realm, and for him to enjoy that reunion of those whom he loved and who loved him, and to soulfully know that whether we live or die, we belong to you through Christ, who is the Lord of life on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. And let us share the words together of the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. As I said, the entire family was hard at work putting this worship service together, and many of them are participating, and friends likewise. So I invite, first of all, Tom Lebecki to offer a special reading.
20 years ago, Mr. Harrington insisted I read a book that he lent me called Silent Spring, and by Rachel Carson. Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts. There is something infinitely healing in the repeated refrains of nature. The assurance that dawn comes after night, and spring after winter. In nature, nothing exists alone. Thank you.
and Lily. Wherefore art thou? Good to see you again.
My grandpa, also known as Bear, to my sister and I, was a huge presence in my life. A pillar of wisdom and support throughout every milestone. What Bear valued most in his life were the relationships he had with his family and friends. As many of you know, one of the ways he strengthened and continued these uniquely personal connections was by talking on the phone, which I'm sure many of you in this room were fortunate enough to be on his long list of contacts. I always look forward to speaking on the phone with Bear, as his voice grounded me wherever I was in my life. So I wanted to share with you one of his voicemails to me. Lily, it's Bear. I want you to be happy. Remember, life is all good. Look at sunshines and not shadows. Get out, work out, and have fun and enjoy life, because there's a lot to enjoy. Okay? Don't get hung up on all these things, will ya? I'm telling you this because I love you and I want you to be happy and healthy, okay? Be good. Bye. And I always will, Bear. Thank you.
And next, we want to give all voice from each of us in a unison reading of Psalm 23. Let's read it together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. And now I invite Annika to offer special music.
Stop your crying, it will be all right. Just take my hand, hold it tight. I will protect you from all around you. I will be here, don't you cry. For one so small, you seem so strong. My arms will hold you, keep you safe and warm. This bond between us can't be broken. I will be here, don't you cry. And you'll be in my heart. Yes, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore. You'll be in my heart. No matter what they say, you'll be here in my heart, always. Why can't they understand the way we feel? They just don't trust what they can't explain. I know we're different, but deep inside us, we're not that different at all. And you'll be in my heart. Believe me, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore. Don't listen to them, 'cause what do they know? We need each other to have to hold. They'll see in time. I may not be with you, but you've got to hold on. They'll see in time. I know we'll show them together, 'cause you'll be in my heart. Believe me, you'll be in my heart. From this day on, now and forevermore, you'll be in my heart. No matter what they say, you'll be here in my heart, always. Always I'll be with you. I'll be there for you, always and always. Just look over your shoulder. Just look over your shoulder. Just look over your shoulder, and I'll be there.
Well done and so true. Roby is here always and in all ways. And we are here to now celebrate memories of the variety of ways that he has touched people's lives and made this world a better place. And I look so forward to all the different facets of the jewel of his life. And I want to begin, and maybe in a way, set a tone for what is to come with a poem that I've written. The poem is entitled Larger Than Life. And I also want to start with a word of scripture before it. From Romans chapter 8, 38 and following. I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor heavenly angels, nor earthly rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor anything in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God. When life is well lived through triumph or strife, sometimes it is said he was larger than life. Such a description seems fully of worth for the time Roby Harrington dwelled on this earth. But what is behind that much loaded phrase that enables those words to be honest in praise? Perhaps it does point to a big reputation. Word of mouth has strong animation, a life of its own that much magnifies the regular person reality hides. Perhaps it's in numbers. Those multitudes who know that they owe him a deep gratitude for soothing the plight of the least and the lost, whose need touched his heart, not counting the cost. Perhaps it's the power of kindness to swell, leaving behind a huge story to tell. Like strangers he helped in all secrecy, who went on to rise to excellency. Maybe it points to business largesse, how invested he was in others' success, how he inspired their promise and hopes by lending a hand and teaching the ropes. Maybe it points to his knowledge so broad, learning from War and from Whitney and God, or books he devoured from thinkers profound, quoting them off to impress and astound. But I think his spirit, now he's deceased, lives on in his family. In them, he's increased. Memory has magic to widen all views, and love in the end reveals what's true. Thus, in their living, they all expand the life of dear Roby the best that they can. Amen. Now I call on Bob Fisk to share.
Reverend Gray, that was a beautiful poem. It certainly did wonderful justice to a great man. Living in Darien, Connecticut in the late 1960s, we joined the Woodway Country Club. One day, sitting by the pool, I watched this woman go out on the diving board and perform this perfectly executed jackknife dive, straight into the water, virtually no splash. I turned to the person next to me and I said, "Wow, who's that?" She said, "That's Whit Harrington." That was my introduction to the Harrington family. Over the years, the Fisks and the Harringtons became very close on several levels. My daughter Linda was in the same class at Darien High School with Scott. My daughter Sue was in the class between Todd and Sue, and she became great friends with both of them. She played on the field hockey team at Darien High School with Sue, and as to Todd, I can remember still listening at night down the hall, hearing her talking with him on the phone many times late into the evening. And on a slightly more attenuated basis, Sue's husband, Peter, was the coach of my grandnephew, Will Parker, who rode stroke on the Williams crew under his tutelage. And over the years, Janet and I became very close with Whit and Roby. We had many great times together, including many times when they invited us up to their house in Dorset, which after a few visits inspired us to get our own house in Vermont up in Barnard. We had many memorable evenings together, times together. Time permits me to talk about just two that stand out. One was in October 1986 at their home in Dorset, when the four of us, all ardent Red Sox fans, watched that ball go through Bill Buckner's legs as the Red Sox lost to the Mets in the 6th game of the World Series. The other memorable event was when Whit and Roby visited us in our house in Barnard in January 1994. It was 20 below zero. So we stayed inside, and I shared with them then the news of my imminent appointment as the independent counsel in the Whitewater investigation, and we spend the weekend talking with them about everything that would entail. Roby had so many interests. Golf, his extensive and extremely productive philanthropy, art, and especially, as Reverend Gray mentioned, books. When we would talk from time to time on the phone, he would ask me, "Have you read such and such book?" Invariably, the answer was no. But many times I would follow up, and his suggestions inspired me to expand and greatly improve my reading experience. Oh, yes. It was also very natural that when I decided to write my own book about my life and career, one of the first persons I turned to for advice was Roby. And he made a number of suggestions which greatly improved the book, and all of which are mentioned with great gratitude in the acknowledgments. One of the many great things about Roby was not only the extremely large number of friends that he had, but also the effort that he made to keep in touch with them. His obituary says, "The phone in his home was constantly ringing," but that was just the incoming calls. I was extremely fortunate to be one of those friends, and every 2 weeks or so, I would get a call, especially recently, "Whiskey, can you tell me what's going on in this world?" Roby had a well-reasoned opinion on a wide variety of subjects, and we had many extremely interesting and stimulating discussions. I really miss those calls, but more than that, I really miss his friendship. It was a wonderful friendship, and one that I will treasure forever. Thank you.
Tom D.
Thank you, Reverend Gray. Good afternoon. I'm honored to have the opportunity today to provide some reflections about Roby. I'm Tom D., CEO of Southwestern Vermont Medical Center. And it's not often that someone like Roby comes into your life. When I came to the hospital about 15 years ago, one of the first things I set out to do was establish a hospital fundraising foundation. This, however, was no easy task due to some of the financial and reputational challenges the hospital was facing back then. And as we looked to create the initial board of the foundation, numerous people spoke to me that the one person we needed to recruit to the board in order to establish credibility was Roby Harrington. Roby would serve as a linchpin in helping us to assemble a successful organization. Not only was he trusted and respected beyond reproach, but he was a consummate trustee, successful businessman, philanthropist, community leader, family man, a person with old-fashioned values that drove him. In typical Roby fashion, he accepted this new challenge and hit the road running. He dove into his responsibilities in so many different ways to help us start this foundation, which ultimately has become a very successful organization with his help and leadership. Now, I must confess, however, early on I made a very bad management decision in the hiring of our first executive leader for the foundation. And after my poor initial selection, I started to pursue a person everyone had told me originally to recruit, by the name of Leslie Keefe. However, my problem with Leslie was that she kept turning down my offers. So after pondering Leslie's continued rejections of the position, I asked Roby to take on the assignment. And within a very short period of time, a matter of days, Roby got the job done. Leslie was hired, and I knew from there that Roby is the type of person that people have a very hard time to say no to. And Roby learned about philanthropy from a very young age. It was part of his family upbringing. He truly understood the power of giving. Roby also had a love for education and for the youth. And he would very quietly underwrite the schooling and college education for many needy young people over the years. Nothing gave him greater satisfaction. Of course, Roby was a gifted man with a keen intellect. As we all know, he was incredibly well-read, as you heard from Reverend Gray and from Bob. He would read at least 1 to 2 books a week, which afforded him a wealth of knowledge on so many diverse topics. When I would meet with Roby, he would ask me, "What are you reading?" And I'd say, "Roby, I'm barely getting through the daily newspapers." And then he would go off with me on some interesting esoteric subject that he knew about in great detail. To me, he was a true mentor, a confidant. He served as a wise counsel, and most importantly, he served as a friend. Roby was a man's man. He was a Marine. He would give me fatherly advice. He would tell me not what I wanted to hear, but what I needed to hear, even if it hurt. Of course, Roby never missed the opportunity to tweak me about my Yankees, always wearing that incessant Red Sox baseball cap. I'm sure I can say he's snickering right now about last night's game. As my wife Rita would always say about him, Roby is an incredible treasure. He is someone we need to cherish. A person for whom I've always had great respect was John Wooden, the legendary coach of the UCLA Dynasty basketball teams. Wooden used to say, "It's not so much who starts the game. What is important is who finishes it." In every aspect of his life, Roby was always the ultimate finisher. Amen to you, Roby. We love you. Thank you.
Now for granddaughters. Annika, Whitney, and Lindley.
We are here today to celebrate the life of a remarkable man, grandpa, dad, husband, and beloved friend to all. Whether reading a book, taking a swing on the golf course, or lending a listening ear, he always made a lasting impact on those around him. A quick note to introduce ourselves: we are the daughters of Sue and Peter Wells and granddaughters of Roby and Whit Harrington. Today, we're going to take you through the golf course of Roby Harrington's life. While we know 18 holes is typical for golf, we also know that would be far too long to take you through 18 memories, and much like a round of golf, so we'll shorten it. So we're going to give you 9 of our favorite memories here today, our front 9, if you will. Hole 1, par 4. We were fortunate enough to live close to our grandparents. Many weekends, our parents would simply just drop us off and say, "See you on Sunday." That was the best. For those of you lucky enough to see the home in Dorset of our grandparents, it was an oasis for any child. There was a pool, Need I say more? There was a playroom in the basement equipped with a ping pong table, a dollhouse, a pool table, a mini putting green, a wine cellar for the adults, and even an outdoor trampoline. We would wake up early, as there was so much to do. We had things we loved to do with Grandpa, like feeding the fish in the pond, filling the bird feeders, and doing a lap around the house before going back inside to find Grandma, making one of her famous egg sandwiches with a possible side of Cheetos and or fudge. We had many outings to Sherry's candy store. Grandma always got her always got her fudge, and we always loaded our bag full of sweet treats. But she always grabbed a pecan or cashew turtle just for Grandpa. Vermont was a special place for everyone, especially as a child. Our grandparents made it so that we could have the childhood everyone dreams of. Lots of fun, time outdoors, and plenty of sweet treats. Hole 2, par 4. Grandpa had a hole-in-one when it came to his ability to speak with others about their passions and could strike up a conversation about anything with anyone at any time. He always kept the conversation going and showed a genuine interest. For me, it felt as if I was his sole focus when we talked. Weeks, months, and even years later, he would recall that same conversation we had. And if our grandpa wasn't able to talk over the phone, with you in person, he would always make a phone call. In fact, Grandpa's phone was always ringing. He spent hours on the phone most days connecting with friends and family. I will miss those calls, as I know many of you will.
Hole 3, par 3. Growing up, there was never a time we left a visit without hearing those familiar words. Drive carefully. As a kid, I brushed this off, thinking he was just nervous or saying it was just a habit. But as I reflect on those moments as an adult, I realized there was more to it. He cared deeply and wanted nothing more than to keep us safe in a world that, as we all know, can be so uncertain and unpredictable. Each drive carefully was a reflection of the profound care he had for us and our lives. He showed us that love is not only in the grand gestures, but also in the everyday reminders to look out for ourselves and for each other. Hole 4, par 3. For all the books scattered around my grandparents' house, I must admit I more often found Grandpa snoozing with the book resting on his chest than actually reading it. I have many fond memories of us sitting together, reading, with his gentle snores in the background, like a comforting ambient track. Those moments of quiet relaxation are a cherished part of how I remember him. And he clearly found time to read them, as everyone in this room knows, he was filled with facts and knowledge. So much so that at a young age, I asked him, in all seriousness, why he never went on Jeopardy, telling him he could win it all.
Hole 5, par 3. Grandpa had an incredible sense of humor. He loved to laugh and make those around him laugh. There is one key memory that sticks out for me. When I was about 14 years old, we were driving on the golf cart in Boca Grande after getting ice cream at our favorite spot, Lou's Caboose. I don't remember why, but all 4 of us, Grandma, Grandpa, Lindley, and I, piled in the front of the golf cart, with Grandma sitting on my lap. And let's just say, Derry did not agree with Grandma. This sparked roars of laughter and reminded Grandpa of a Seinfeld episode when Kramer feeds his horse beans. And let's just say, Beans did not agree with the horse. So there we were, swerving along the golf cart path, all in hysterics, simply laughing until we cried. Grandpa loved a good laugh, and he certainly made us laugh many, many times. Hole 6, par 5. Our grandpa had many gifts. One of his greatest was his desire to guide and advise his loved ones. A while back, I was in high school. A dear friend of mine came up to Manchester with me to visit my grandpa. She was very interested in meeting him because of his lifelong career at Young and Rubicam, and wanted to pick his brain on his career in marketing and advertising, as she was considering a similar career path. 2 hours later, we were finally on our way home. Up until this final Christmas, my friend would come up and speak with my grandpa, and he continued to give her advice and listen to her questions. That was Grandpa, always guiding, supporting, advising, and connecting. Hole 7, par 4. Grandpa always stressed the importance of education, and he and my grandma were very committed to helping others receive one. He was curious about what the three of us were doing in school and always encouraged us to prioritize our educations. I remember in college when friends of mine were considering pursuing the program Teach for America. He shared with me how the program came to be and offered to help my friends in any way he could, as he had been connected with this organization for many years. He was not only committed to education here in the United States, but also abroad. And I remember growing up, I would find postcards from girls in foreign countries who were receiving an education because of support from my grandparents. He always believed that education was the universal key to a more just, equal, and stable world and economy, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. Hole 8, par 4. One of my oldest memories of Grandpa in Florida was when I was 7 years old. I went down with Grandma to do some errands while Whitney stayed back with Grandpa. It was well known that Grandpa did not like the pool, nor did he go in the pool, ever. So Whitney knew she wouldn't be able to go into the pool until we returned. Much to our surprise, when we came home, we found Whitney in the pool and Grandpa lying atop a pool float in his bathing suit, although not wet at all. I think this was the only time I ever saw Grandpa in the pool. He had a soft spot, and somehow his grandchildren could almost always convince him to do something or try something he initially might not have been so inclined to do.
Hole 9, par 5. Family members in the room can attest that Grandpa never missed a holiday or event, big or small. There was always a thoughtful, witty card in the mail. My birthday, May 28th, was just a few days before Grandpa passed on May 31st. On June 1st, I checked my mailbox, and sure enough, there was a birthday card waiting for me. The emotions that filled me, realizing this would be the last card and the last message from him, were overwhelming. I shared this feeling with my sister, who in the midst of our shared sadness, helped me see it from a beautiful perspective. She said, his love carries on, even though his physical presence isn't here, and she is right. While those cards won't be arriving in the future, his memory and the love he had for us will remain with us always. As we move forward, let's carry his spirit with us, embracing his lessons and passing on his love, sharing the golf clubs of wisdom and love with the next generation. And as Grandpa would always say, please drive carefully. And we say, thank you for listening.
That, ladies, was a hole in one. Bridget Andrews. Here you be.
First off, I want to say that this normally would never happen. I don't get up and speak in front of people at all. I can talk to anybody, but I just don't do this as a rule. But I felt that today I couldn't let this pass without saying something about Roby. Sorry. As you know, I'm Bridget, and most of you probably have either met me or heard my name. I had the honor to start my journey with Whit 9+ years ago. She was lovely, sweet, and with such a great sense of humor. And she knew how to put Roby in his place with just a small gesture. My kind of girl right there. Then my next journey was with Roby, and what a journey it was as his main caregiver. Those are his words, AKA the boss, the tribal leader, or the other one. In those days, that was when he didn't want to be the heavy. So that's when the phone, in those days, when he would say, ask the other one, those were the days that he didn't want to be the heavy, and that's when my phone would start ringing. Now, mind you, most days there was a caregiver standing right there in the room with him, and in the background they'd be yelling, "I'm right here, just so you know." They always thought they didn't know that they didn't show up for work. When I say my phone would ring, minimum 4 times a day, at least, and that's probably even being generous. Max 10-ish, again generous, and at random times. Sometimes 6:30 a.m., and he'd want to know if I was up, and I'd say, "I am now." Or 3:15 in the morning, because he's fiddling around with his phone, and I'm sure some of you have gotten that same call that late in the or early morning time. Yikes. Then when I'd go in the morning, he'd be like, "I feel like I didn't sleep a wink last night." "Yeah, me either." I said, "How does it feel?" When I finally felt like we were in sync with each other, I was then able to reason or call him out respectfully on an issue, or at least show him the other side of life as it is today. I believe that this is when our trust and friendship in each other evolved. I would have never thought in my 57 years he'd be, and still is, my 95-year-old best friend. So that isn't what, now I can't see through the tears. Holy cow. Isn't that what you do? You go above and beyond for that friend. I quickly became his phone techie, cable repair go-to. You're welcome, Tom Lebecki, wherever you are. His accountant, banker, realtor, doctor, and secretary. God bless Phyllis. Not sure if everybody knows her, but he absolutely loved her. And many times I'd say, "I don't know how she did it, oy vey." And then he'd say, "I'm taking my union break," and we'd both laugh. There were also days I was Mrs. Harrington when making phone calls. I'd cover the phone and point to my ring finger and say, "We're married." And he'd go. Now that's not saying I wasn't over my head taking these tasks on, but I was. But I felt like, or my thoughts were, he didn't want to be, where am I? He didn't want to be in charge that day. He wanted to be able to take the day off, sit back and be management, or at least drive from the back seat, like always. And who could blame him after all these years? We learned each other's likes and dislikes really fast. That's why I say there's the old Roby and the new Roby. Who doesn't eat leftovers and breakfast for dinner? You guessed it, Roby Harrington. Well, he did after a while, so he learned real fast. It was scrambled eggs with a half an English muffin and jam, or 2 small pancakes, Denny's style, because they only made the best, 2 small pancakes with Jones sausage, and yes, he knows the difference in his sausage. So, and don't cut it up. He did not want it cut up either. I think as a team, we were able to bring out the kid in him, so to speak. And he was able to put his guard down, or that's what we felt like. That's what it felt like to me anyways. And what a sense of humor. The things we laughed and talked about were hilarious. I'd love to share, but I think my 2 to 3 minutes is almost over, and some are not so church-worthy. Boy, how we would bicker back and forth until one of us would let the other win. Also, we were able to get Roby focused on other TV stations. For the longest time, it was all Fox News and business, blaring in the background until he got hearing aids. Then it was a different ball. Until he finally got hearing aids, but we now had a routine in the morning. It was Good Morning America, this was me, mind you. Good Morning America, Kelly and Mark, let's make a deal, and then The Price is Right. He thought they were kind of idiotic shows, but he watched them and answered the questions and did all the, game playing that he didn't like. Then at 7, it was Idiot Hour, Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. When I'd answer the actual question or puzzle first, he'd say to me, "You never let me win." And I said, "Oh, well, that's the name of the game, buddy." In closing, I feel like I've gained and have another family. Thank you to Whit and Roby. May we meet again on the other side someday with no introduction needed but a "Hey, you." And drive carefully. Do me a favor, drive carefully. Thank you.
Buzz, Lan.
Well, first of all, Sue Harrington put up this wonderful picture of her dad smiling at all of us, and I think that we should all give him a smile back right now. So. Hello, Roby. I actually thought he might answer me there for a minute. He always did. He was always there as a friend, and I'm sure he was to all of you as dad, granddad, golfing buddy, business colleague, whatever. He wanted to be and was good at all those things. He was a really good man. He was a gentleman. I miss Roby. I first met Roby many years ago at Equanic at one of those outside umbrella tables under the beautiful old maple tree, no longer there. That's one of the great venues in golf and in life. I stopped by his table to say hello to another friend. Roby immediately stood up, looked me in the eye, introduced himself, and greeted me warmly. He asked about me. It was one of those moments of immediately knowing I liked this guy. He always treated me the same way. We went on to spend a lot of time together. As Roby neared the end of his quite amazing life, we talked of many things. I told him that the wonderful feelings of friendship with him were deep in my heart, and they still are. To be clear, Roby did not want to die. He wanted to keep living. He wanted to smile, to laugh, and to think, and to wonder. He wanted those legs to work well again so that he could play golf, but he mostly wanted to think. He wanted to watch and help his grandkids and great-grandkids grow up and to see their accomplishments. He wanted to be with friends, to enjoy conversations, and to the end, he wanted to make a difference in people's lives, for family and friends and individual lives for sure, but also contributions for a better society. Roby was too competitive to let go of life easily. He had all those contributions he wanted to make and wanted to help and encourage us to make before he slept. But mostly he wanted to hang on to his loving thoughts and remembrances about Whit. He had hoped so much to complete the journey with her at his side. She did remain in the front of his mind and the bottom of his heart forever. Roby was many things in life, and they've been mentioned today, many of them. He was a good son, a great student, an honorable Marine, a talented and very successful businessman, a good husband and father, a great supporter of the arts and nonprofits, a leader in so many realms, a skillful golfer, a loyal friend. I'd like to tell you about my friendship with Roby because I think many of you will identify with parts of the story and of your own relationship with him. You're here because you liked and loved Roby. he equally liked and loved all of you. My feelings of friendship with Roby were many years in the making. These feelings were there as he and I shared conversations about, well, everything. About his growing up and mine, because he asked about that. About his parents and mine. About our colleges. Mostly how lucky we felt we were to spend so much of our lives with our soulmates. The best in the world, we thought. Roby and Whit, always together for so long, helping each other. And Roby there for Whit to the end in a wonderfully steadfast and gracious manner, ensuring she held her respect. Such a magnificent couple. And about our kids and grandkids and our hopes that they would find themselves and be themselves. He grabbed every possible opportunity to talk with pride about his grandkids, including Elliot, who was the one I was fortunate enough to get to know the best. Golf was a vehicle for Roby and I to share our time together, and I know it was for many of you. Others of you spent time through his lifetime enjoying other sports with him, but for Roby and me, it was golf. We played only aquatic together, but it seemed like there were so many other courses that we played together. We had so many conversations about shared experiences on many of the great courses in the world, including Pine Valley, where he was the longest standing member. And a lot about memorable shots, which for him with his talent were real. For me, there may have been a little folk memory involved, but it was all fun. We shared many conversations about the merits of our respective alma maters, Princeton and Dartmouth, reliving great classes and great teachers and exciting moments in the sports rivalry between the schools. We did defend our respective alma maters, but in a final concession to Roby, this Dartmouth grad is wearing a Princeton tie today. Here's to you, Roby. We shared stories together. One of the many times we were together talking about our fathers, which we did often, I told him this story, which occurred with me with a different friend, but I thought Roby might relate to it, and he did. It involved a beautiful blue-skied, sunny day in playing golf. On the 9th hole, I was about to hit my second shot from the fairway. As I drew my club back, my friend called to me, "Wait, don't swing." "What's the problem?" I asked. "Didn't you see that white butterfly dancing around your ball? That could be my father." "What?" I asked. "Yes, don't you have that feeling that your parents may have been reincarnated as different critters?" "No, not really," I said as I shook my head. And then, as I stared down at my ball, I noticed 2 white butterflies cavorting around it, and I knelt down to cover them up. "Now what are you doing?" my golf partner asked. "Just thought I should cover up your dad and his friend, in case your mom is watching." Roby agreed that just as well could have been him in that story. We shared meals and drink at larger gatherings and especially at more intimate ones. At those meals, Donna and I would have in Roby's home. I'm sure many of you similarly treasured those lunches and dinners. Thank you, Bridget. Wonderful memories. And I'd like to note appreciation for the special friendship and intellectual stimulation that Drika provided for Roby. But it was mostly all those cherished conversations about everything that we had, about each other's health, about the health system, about doctors' qualifications or lack thereof, about trying valiantly to help turn around the failings of the medical system, about patients' engagement in their own care, about medical costs, about just caring about each other. We shared stories about each other's work and contributions we hoped we might have made. We talked about our heroes, our fathers, and about Ike, Roby's commander, about Roby's 2 good friends who signed up with him for the Marines, fought next to him in the Korean War, but never made it home. He never forgot them. He frequently mentioned them to me in phone calls. "Have I told you lately about those fellas? I think about them all the time," he said. About leadership and about specific leaders, Washington and Lincoln and Churchill, and about authors. He had read so much more than I have, as others of you have admitted to today as well. From David Halberstam to Atul Gawande to Doris Kearns Goodwin, and books. From The Coldest Winter about the Korean War, to Eisenhower and War and Peace, to the social translation of American medicine, to Being Mortal, to Proof of Heaven, to Prequel, to Madame Tussauds, to Unbroken, to The Body Has a Head. So many, and so many more. We talked about religion and faith together, about the joys and struggles in work and in life, about wonder and awe, about losses, about the whole journey. I'm sure many of you treasured similar conversations with Roby. I always felt I could comfortably talk with Roby about anything and everything. We shared the same values. I valued his wisdom. I valued his friendship. So, if you're listening, Roby, know that I will cherish and carry these feelings of friendship with you forever. They won't fade. I will smile whenever I think of you. I will smile when I see a white butterfly dance around my ball on the golf course. Thanks for making my life better, my friend. I miss you, Roby.
Now, grandsons.
Hi, everyone. I'm Will. This is Matthew. I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Big Fish. It's kind of how I expected today going. All these people coming out of woodworks, telling us stories that probably never made sense to us or we never thought were real. I was always in awe of Princeton growing up. Didn't know where you could have a dorm room that had thousands of people in one room. All the roommates my grandfather had. But I realized over the years that all of his stories were about the people he loved and about his family. Everyone from his kids to his great-grandkids here and in the back. And we love him for that, and we miss him dearly. So, Matt, you have some.
Thank you, Grandma, so much for giving me the best family ever, who I love very, very much. I am so grateful to have a lot of special memories about Grandma and Grandpa. First memory I have for Grandpa is while Dad and Grandpa played golf on Booker Graham Florida golf course, he let me drive the golf course the first time. My memory about Grandma is traveling New York City to see Broadway shows. Grandpa is so generous, give me a nice check, donation to Camp Hill Hustle Community, where I live. Grandpa is so proud I become an actor of Camp Hustle Players. That's how he loved me very much. He also loved community very much too. Grandpa's in a happy place right now with Grandma, and we love him very, very much. Grandpa, please be so good. Take care of yourself and Grandma. We love you very much.
Now, kids, your turn.
Hello, everyone. It's been almost 2 months since Dad passed away. His absence has left a hole in my heart, just as my mother's has done for the past 5 years. Yet what they both did so well is let us find our wings. And those wings have taken me to special people, purposeful work, and a life that keeps on teaching me. I often thought about something as I left Dad's home these past 5 years since Mom passed away. He never would say, "Please stay," or "I need you to stay." He wouldn't do that. He wanted us to live our fullest lives. And as Bridget Andrews, our dear friend and Mom and Dad's friend and amazing caregiver, said to me recently, he was always thinking about others before himself. As a child, and even into adulthood, I did not fully see or understand that about Dad. He was off being the breadwinner of the house, and while he always made it to our games or special performances, or anything out of the ordinary, he was on the train at 7:30 a.m. with his New York Times in hand, and back about 7:30 p.m. Mom was the center of our universe, and she was a rock to us and to him every day. Dad and I loved each other unconditionally, and my husband and children loved him unconditionally too. It was the last decade or so that I began to fully understand the fullness of Dad and the essence of the human being that he is. So when Bridget said that to me, he always thought about others first, that was not a surprise at all to me now. He did things in his own way. We all know what a stubborn guy he could be. Even in that stubbornness and sometimes intractableness, his heart was so good. He always wanted what was best for me, my family, and my brothers and their families. He cared deeply. I'd even venture to say inside the home, Dad was a bit misunderstood during his New York City working years. And coming to understand the essence of Dad most fully in these last 5 years will forever be a great gift of my life. He let his guard down a bit. He let me in a whole new way. And that unconditional love that we always had for each other became an unconditional liking to be together. One of the last times I visited him, all by myself, we sat and played backgammon, which we had done for 50 plus years. He won, of course. Well, let me be honest, I let him win. And those minutes together, just sitting around the board, the same one we played on since I was a little kid, will be forever imprinted in my mind. I'm so proud of how far we came in our friendship. He had moved beyond needing to always hear that my husband and girls were happy to wanting to learn more deeply about their lives. As he became more vulnerable, he allowed each of us to show our true selves, not the image of everything being perfect. Life felt so much more full when we talked that way, and the deep connection got deeper. As my husband will say, coming home from Dad's the last few years, there was a new lightness to me, and he could feel the depth of my love for my dear father. Knowing Dad left us in that place of vulnerability, he will find Mom and share that with her in a new way, and this is one of the happiest thoughts I could have. Dad is such a special person, and given his childhood with parents off working all the time and being brought up by non-family members, he had to learn through his love for Mom and through her example of love to all of us what real connection was, and that it can be messy and unhappy and even contentious sometimes, only making the relationship more beautiful. Right after Dad died, I decided to sit down and read what he told me was his absolute favorite book of the many thousands of books he read. He said he had reread it in the last few months. I think he knew his, as he would say, marching orders were near, and so he wanted to cherish every word of Wallace Stegner's Crossing to Safety. In one of my commitments upon Dad's passing to read more novels and fewer leadership and other nonfiction books, I am reading Crossing to Safety. It's a beautiful book, and I've come to understand why it was Dad's favorite book of all. Stegner's book spoke to Dad as it does to our love and friendship. Dad was a nostalgic guy. Even though he didn't always want to know about sad moments in the lives of people he loved, he did feel very deeply. He was a scholar and a lover and much more, all wrapped up in one special human being. I often felt in my younger years I could not hold a candle to his intellect. What I now realize so fully in our later years together is, while being an intellect was what he knew, what he wanted most of all was to love and be loved. As I close, I'll share from Crossing to Safety. Quote, "We made plenty of mistakes, but we never tripped anybody to gain an advantage or took illegal shortcuts when no judge was around. We've all jogged and panted it out the whole way. I didn't know myself well and still don't, but I did know and know now the few people I loved and trusted." End quote. Dad had such extraordinary integrity and values, and as one friend said about his own father's lifelong friendship with Dad, if Roby was your friend, he was loyal forever. That's Dad, loyal, kind, loving, and giving, as the day is long. I miss him dearly and will carry all he and Mom taught me with me each day for the rest of my life. I love you, Dad.
Thanks, Phil. Hello, probably getting tired, sitting there for a long time. But our dad, well, and of course our mom, taught us to be kind to everyone. And I believe they both demonstrated that throughout their life, and I got to witness it a lot more when earlier in my career, I was in corporate advertising, so heard a lot of stories from colleagues. And years after he retired, I was running to a meeting in the Y&R building, and I jumped on an elevator, and I recognized an old colleague of his. We exchanged greetings, and that was it. He got off 3 floors above. And on the elevator still was just me and this elderly maintenance man. And we were quiet, we're going up to the top floor, and he looked at me and goes, "You're Roby, Harrington's son?" He goes, "He was the best of all the executives. He was kind to everybody, treated everyone the same." You know, we've heard a lot of wonderful traits today. He had many, well-read, smart, generous, a character. I just briefly want to focus on his storytelling, and his ability to embellish a bit. You know, there's just, we'd be here for hours with all the stories, but I think just there's a consistent theme, and Will referenced it, about Princeton, and my friends who are here today always enjoyed it as well. Somehow in every story he referenced an old classmate, and he was a roommate of mine at Princeton. And after a while you start counting, and you're thinking, well, we've got to be up to 30 people now, and you're thinking, that's a lot of moving for 4 years. But he did it with conviction, and the stories go on, and it's always that Princeton roommate. He was really proud of being a Tiger. Everyone who knows my relationship with my dad, it's no secret, it could be colorful at times. There's so many stories, so I just chose a couple to talk about. He was first teaching me golf at Dorset Hill Field Club here. And I was hitting a few good shots, but then, I kept hitting a lot of divots, and he finally stormed over to me and goes, "Todd, you have to concentrate on the ball." And I just looked at him calmly and go, "Dad, I'm 13. I'm just discovering girls, and that's really all I'm focused on right now." He tried so hard, and we had so many funny banters, and one of them had to do with what we all know. He's a current event news junkie, couldn't get enough, read the paper cover to cover. He's the only guy I know who paid retail his whole life for the paper. One day I was sitting in the kitchen, and I was in grade school, and he comes storming in, and he says, "Can you believe that senator from Michigan?" And I was slumped over a bowl of like Captain Crunch or Cocoa Puffs, I don't know, something really healthy. And I said, "Dad, I don't even know who the senator of Michigan is." And then he launched into a monologue about, "What are they teaching you in that school, Todd?" And I'm going, "Dad, I'm 11. I barely know the senators of Connecticut." So he just went on. He then stormed out of the kitchen and tried to find another audience for his monologue. But, there's so many, times of one-liners, as my wife Ruth has always said. He's master of one-liners. Like when we go to a wedding and he come out and Chip Scott and I are dressed in the same suit, and he goes, "We just look so disheveled." And he just said a great line, I'll never forget. He goes, "Why can't my children ever look crisp?" And so, I ended by saying, going back to his generosity, that really what so many people have referenced today. And the stories are endless in what he's done for so many people. But I came across a quote the other day, and I thought it fitting, and it just came upon me, so it made sense. It said, "A society grows great when old men plant trees, the shade of which they'll never experience." And I go, wow, that's good for a Saturday for Dad. And I said, it really, to me, it encapsulated who he was and what he did. It wasn't just about now with his friends in the community. It was really about planning for the future to make it better for others. And I think it's safe to say, everyone here who knows him, your legacy is sound, Dad, for many years to come. And I thank you, and I miss you, and say hi to Mom for me. Thank you.
My dad was a one of a kind, and I think we use that term sometimes casually, but I don't know anybody like my dad and never will. storyteller, a big thinker, a big personality, a connector, a reader full of facts, and most importantly, it was the love he had for people, and people loved him. My dad and I were really different. We always were really different. And whether it was politics, you know, policies, whatever it is. And that made for a lot of challenges growing up and for many years. But as Sue was saying, things softened in the last recent years. For me, some of that I can attribute to my wife, Pijo, who just developed such a beautiful relationship with him. But I think what changed is I learned to be more honest with him, because sometimes that was hard with my dad. And he learned to listen a lot better. And I can't say that our differences didn't change that much, but I think what happened was in our conversations, it became more and more apparent that we shared so much of what we cared about and what we valued. And even though we went about things so differently, we both cared so much about our family and our friends and caring and trying to do some good in the world. And you know, many of you probably heard the expression in your conversations that I did for the last few years, how are we gonna fix the world? And I think my dad and I would have approached it quite differently, but we both wanted good for the world and other people. And I'm so grateful that you are all here. He loved you a lot. And I know you loved him. And you know, it made me surprised, because I was going through his desk last night. I think he saved every letter that was ever sent to him. And it was very special. And it's a stack, and it shows how much he cared about you all and you cared about him. So I'm grateful. Thank you for loving my dad.
Well, you're almost at the end. I'm the Roby of our generation. The world my dad grew up in was a world of privilege where norms were quite defining. My dad joined the same clubs his father joined, and to a large extent, his dad's expectations were determinative. My dad led a full and rich life, and at his passing, I received his wallet, which had the predictable items in them, including a beautiful picture of his wonderful wife. But there was one item that really got me thinking. It was his original Social Security card. And on it had the address 306 East First Street, Jamestown, North Dakota, and his employer was the Jamestown Broadcasting Company. Not an address you might have expected from a guy going to Princeton who was 1 year away from being admitted into Pine Valley, the best golf course in the world. But there it was, laminated, a card more than 75 years old memorializing his summer as a broadcaster. With his interest in the performative arts growing, the next summer he auditioned for summer stock at a theater on the Cape. As he told me, his dad said, "Sure, you can take that job, but if you do, don't plan on coming back to this home." Now, most of us know that my dad can't resist embellishing a good story, but there's always some basic facts in there. But flash forward 29 years to 1969, Roby 3 and Roby 4. My dad was a successful businessman, jet-setting around the world during the week, and on the weekends he always had a Saturday and Sunday morning golf game. But the family almost always came together once a week at Sunday dinner, where as a product of my generation, I was starting to question some of the social norms that had determined his life options. As my siblings will attest, at almost every meal, my debates with my dad dominated the conversation. While my dad never had any expectation that his opinion was going to be influenced by the logic of my argument, he did listen before rebutting. And over the next 4 years, my critical thinking skills sharpened because of his willingness to engage with me differently than his father probably did with him. I learned to be quick on my feet, and I am convinced our dinner debates played a huge role in the success that I would have. I sat at the head of an editorial board for a New York City publishing company debating the relative merits of ideas, a job that I had trained for around the dining room table on Pembroke Road. Thank you, Dad, for letting all the flowers bloom. And thank you all on behalf of the family for all of you being here today.
I want the four of you to know that it's only occasionally that we see each other. But I hear about you all the time from your dad. And his pride in you and your lives, the lives of your family, were his daily gift. So God bless you all. This next part is really to draw all of us in and also to touch upon all of the memories, the stories that are part of this amazing community that has assembled here this afternoon. And so with music in the background, I want us to close our eyes and imagine Roby with us doing what you loved doing together. Let's be in a spirit of silent meditation. I invite Julie to offer closing prayer.
In the days to come, surrounded by the simple blessings of a community of care and love, we'll carry memories of Roby with us. So we pray. Give us strength, wisdom, and thanksgiving. Give us strength to live our lives so that each day we find more compassion, more understanding, and more of the loving kindness that fills our world with joy and laughter. Give us courage to cherish one another so that we use our lives to heal instead of forget, and lead ourselves to the possibility of forgiveness instead of defiance. We give thanks for Roby. His memory lives on in the spirit of life that surrounds us, and his memory cherished by us dwells deeply within as the person he was and still is in our hearts. We celebrate the cycles of life in which we find ourselves, celebrating life at its beginning and its end, both always present among us. God, remind us to love life as fully as we are able. Remind us to treasure our friends and families as Roby treasured his friends and family. And even as we bid him farewell, the gift of his life is a treasure that cannot be ungiven. We celebrate the life Roby lived among us, and now his soul is at rest with you. Amen.
Shall we sing our closing song? You will find it in the Crimson Chalice hymnal. It is number 546, Amazing Grace. Shall we stand? Now may the Lord bless you and keep you, Roby. May the Lord make his face to smile upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance and concern on each and every one of us and our world, and grant us peace today and forevermore. Amen. Amen. Let us join one another at the reception at the Aquantic.